The 118 rediscovers their sense of camaraderie in the 911 Season 8 finale, but the impact on one character's storyline might have inadvertently destroyed the chances of a reunion many fans were hopeful to see. Many of 9-1's best episodes were made well before Season 8, but that's not to say the season was lacking when it came to well-executed twists. Bobby's death, Buck's unexplained mummy curse, and the near liberation of Maddie's head from her neck were all extremely memorable plotlines. Nonetheless, it's the Season 8 finale that will mostly affect the story of 911 Season 9. For instance, those hoping for a Buck and Eddie romance on 911 can give up on this happening now that Buck is beginning to look for his own place while maintaining that Eddie's house never truly felt like home. This drives an unnecessary physical wedge between the two, who could likely coexist as roommates with little issue. However, Buck's move ties into another major plot point that calls into question the likelihood of other characters appearing in the franchise again. 911 Season 8 ends with Chim convincing Eddie to stay in Los Angeles. Eddie doesn't even question Chim's authority to give that order. If it wasn't going to be Hen, then Chim replacing Bobby in 911 always made the next best sense. He began the first season butting heads with Bobby over wanting more responsibility, and he was one of the most shattered by Bobby's death. But Chim truly shows his leadership skills when he convinces Eddie to return from Texas with a speech about the legacy of the family Bobby created at the 118. Not only does Eddie agree to move back from El Paso, but Buck also calls off his plan to transfer to another station. Technically speaking, this doesn't change Eddie's plans a lot. His primary goal in moving home was to become part of Christopher's life again, a goal he achieved when Christopher moved out of Eddie's parents' house and began permanently living with Eddie again. Leaving Texas means that Eddie's parents can't look after their grandson when Eddie's on a call, but Eddie's had years of experience dealing with that issue when Christopher was much younger and less adapted to managing his cerebral palsy. Christopher will likely be fine, but that's not to say leaving Texas won't have at least one consequence. Eddie leaving Texas eliminates the easiest opportunity for a 911 Lone Star reunion. The spin-off characters were mere hours away from Eddie and Christopher. Judd, Owen Strand, Buck, Hen, and Eddie in the 911 Lone Star crossover. Had he not still been reliant on his parents to help care for Christopher, Eddie's initial struggles to find a job in El Paso would have been easily solvable. If he were to move 8 or 9 hours down the road, Eddie could have used his connections from the 911 Lone Star Season 2 crossover to get a job with Judd in Austin. He gets along with Judd and Mojon, with a strong likelihood that he'd connect with TK and Carlos as well if given more time together. Not only did this formal crossover not occur, but no one from the Lone Star cast even happened to pass through El Paso for a short guest appearance. This is a shame for fans who have wanted to check back in with the crew since the spin-off's cancellation, especially seeing as Eddie's relocation provided the most easily justifiable story reasons for the Lone Star cast to appear. With all of the flagship cast now back in Los Angeles, the chances of seeing Lone Star cameos on 911 feel much less probable than they might have been. Could 911 still feature Lone Star cameos in the future? There are more marketable cameos to feature right now. Rob Lowe as Owen and Gina Torres as Tommy with the 911 Lone Star cast. With Bobby's life ended by one of 9-1's most memorable villains, the 126 in Austin is no longer the only station in the franchise to undergo a recent change in leadership. This alone means the characters could share some relatable talking points, but the reality is that 911 isn't as likely to do a crossover with a cancelled series while trying to promote a newer spin-off. If the 118 were going to crossover with any other crew in the franchise, then such an event would more likely feature the crew of the upcoming 911 Nashville. The 911 Nashville cast already boasts recognizable names such as Jessica Capshaw, Chris O'Donnell, and Leanne Rimes. Short of getting Rob Lowe to visit the 118 all the way from Owen Strand's new position in New York, 911 won't get the same buzz from a Lone Star cameo as from making use of 911 Nashville star power. Additionally, sparking interest in the newer series is a much higher priority than revisiting characters the franchise already chose to retire. But if Nashville were to justify its own Lone Star cameo at some point, it would still be the next best thing.